Joining me this evening is Kanu Gohain, the former Director General of the DGCA, and Air Marshal P.S. Ahluwalia, an aviation expert, also with us on the broadcast. Gentlemen, good evening. Thank you for joining us here on WION. Mr. Gohain, if I can come to you first. The dream of air travel, for all, it sounds really great. It sounds like the perfect pitch for a new India. But is infrastructure a big problem and something that we really need to keep a keen focus on if that dream is to become a reality?
Well, it is necessary that the infrastructure also has to grow along with the increased frequency of air movements in this country. No doubt the government has, through its regional connectivity scheme, has reached those remote areas or those hinterland of the main airports where earlier there was no civil air operation for the common man. Today, with this scheme in force, the government has also taken some measures to improve the infrastructure. For example, the number of helipads. For example, the number of unused airports which are being made operational. Once these things are set in place, the secondary parts, that is the navigational aids, the weather informations, will also follow. So I see a great hope in this regional connectivity scheme, which will add up to the national aviation scenario.
All right. Air Marshal Ahluwalia, let's look at the airport in Mumbai, but for instance, it's the busiest single runway airport in the world. The figures, of course, touching almost 1,000 flights very recently, and obviously the media picking up on that. We keep talking about records, but it was the very same airport that saw a near collision taking place very recently between two aircraft. Do you think it's quantity versus quality, and it's time that we focus on the latter rather than the former?
I think it's very important that all of us, we come on TV channels, we make brave statements in the press that, we're expanding, we're going to be a major civil aviation force. I just heard Mr. Gohain talking about connectivity, etc. But I think the most important aspect is safety. Safety is paramount, and every little incident that is happening, whether it's small or major, is going to lead and indicate that a catastrophe is on its way. And if we don't do something about it, we are in big, big trouble. I think we are not transparent. The number of air misses that we've had in the last decade, anywhere between 20 to 40 every year. It is the DGCA which is responsible for appointing SITs to investigate this, is not putting it out in the public domain. And if it's not put in the public domain, then, we can put things under the carpet, which we happily do. And this will be at the cost of safety, at the cost of people's lives.
All right.
So I think it is mandatory for transparency to be in the system. And if there's no transparency, we are going to suffer the consequences of these near misses. Why should you have a near miss? We've got procedures in place because you might understand that the air traffic controllers, they're under extreme pressure. They're, about 2,300 at the moment in place, whereas we need something like 4,000.
Fair enough. Let me take that across
this is what you call
Mr.
infrastructure.
Gohain. Let's see what he has to say to that contention. Mr. Gohain, would you like to react? Do you think that safety should be paramount, but perhaps it isn't right now as far as Indian skies go?
First of all, I concur with Air Marshal retired Mr. Ahluwalia that safety is paramount. The main idea of aviation is to have a safety. Now, the point which we are trying to make is quality versus quantity. Well, yes. For example, the near misses which have been reported over the Mumbai skies and the lack of shortage of ATCOs, where the human element is being taxed to its maximum, where leading to fatigue and inadvertent mistakes being committed. Well, after you would all remember in the Indian skies when we had the Charki Dadri case of mid-air collision of a Saudi aeroplane and a Russian aircraft, India was one of the countries, second to the United States, to have introduced the airborne collision warning system.
Right.
Now, with that as a mandatory equipment to be fitted on every Indian aircraft and every aircraft flying Indian skies. Now, with this technology advancement today and the pilots being trained on that, I would not like to put a scare that this equipment tells, first of all, the traffic advisory. Secondly, it tells resolution advisory. That is, traffic is there or not is shown on the screen. Traffic to avoid each other is also being told by warnings and call-outs for which the pilots are trained to react immediately.
All right.
As Air Marshal Ahluwalia says, yes, it's correct. Sometimes the reaction may be late and there could be a catastrophe. With
right, Mr. Gohain, please allow me to come in over here. I'm running out of time on the broadcast and I want to give Air Marshal Ahluwalia the last word as well. I'd really like him, sir, very quickly, if you can give us your closing comments. We are running out of time on the broadcast.
Let me just put it very clear that creating an infrastructure is paramount also. Unless you have the infrastructure in place, the expansion of civil aviation should not happen. It must be the infrastructure first and then the expansion. When I say infrastructure, I'm not talking about just the runways, the airfields, the taxi tracks and things, navigation aids, etc. It is very important to ensure that the traffic is manageable. Just like Mr. Gohain just mentioned, the air traffic controllers, they are working under extreme pressure. Why don't we realize that human error can be a major disaster? It can lead to many, many accidents. So that's the first thing that we need to do, is to have trained manpower, whether it's in the cockpit. Sometimes we push these pilots into a place and they are incompetent at times or inefficient. We can't have that.
Sure.
We can't have controllers. We cannot have, we've got to have the right kind of technology in place.
Right.
Do we have sufficient radars? We can have TCAS, we can have, accident avoidance system, but these are very, very simple things.
At the end of the day, it is humans that are operating this technology. And I take your point, sir, that it should be the right woman or man for the job, not just anyone who's handling things when it comes to the safety of our passengers. We'll have to leave it at that. Air Marshal P.S. Ahluwalia, Mr. Kanu Gohain, thank you both for joining us this evening on WION Fine Print.